You are listening to the Rock and Goal podcast.
Welcome along to episode 7 of the Rock and Goal podcast, the official podcast of Dumbarton Football Club. My name is Fraser Clark and today I'm joined by Jack Crawford, but not Chris McMillan, who is at somewhere called Wembley Stadium to watch his beloved Blades. I've never heard of that particular stadium, but I obviously can't imagine it's a patch on here.
I've been once.
Is it nice?
It was okay, before I got promoted, so it was alright.
Hopefully
he enjoys his day as much as I did.
Never really heard of it. But anyway, you don't tune in to listen to two local newspaper journalists, however, so later on we're delighted to say that we'll be joined by everyone's favourite member of this Sun's squad, with apologies to all the players that I've obviously just defended there, Aron Lynas. And if you liked him before, then you'll want to listen to this. Anyway, we'll start as always by looking back on the last month or so, and we recorded our last podcast before Albion Rovers visited the Rock. Any memory of what happened that day, Jack?
I remember I was sitting here before, bigging up a certain player that went on to tear us apart. Did he score 2 and set up 2 or 3?
Yep, I think he scored 2 and set up 2.
Yeah, Charlie Reilly. It was one of those games, you just couldn't believe what was happening in front of you. Every time Albion went forward that day, they looked like they were going to score. The Dumbarton midfield was completely missing. And to be honest, in the first half, Brett kept it from being any worse than what it was.
I turned to Chris at one point, and I think it was in the first half still, when Albion had scored a couple of really, really good goals. And I was like, I'm actually, in a perverse way, kind of enjoying this, because they are so good. Like, they have been phenomenal to watch. And I think people might have listened to the podcast. I know that people have had a wee bit of a kind of like a jokey dig at us for how much we bigged up Charlie Reilly. That's why. That's why the guy is going on to massive things, and I'm really excited to see where he ends up, because he was excellent that day. Joe Bevan was absolutely outstanding that day as well, and I think he's only 18, which is a really quite terrifying thought. One thing, if we're going to focus more on the Dumbarton side of things, is that I guess shows how much Dumbarton missed Gregor Buchanan. Yeah,
that was the one thing. I think he was ill that day, wasn't he? We spoke about it before the game, and it proves how key he is. And when you look at the guys that came in, it's not exactly it's not much of a downgrade, you would say. That back four was still capable of doing much better than they did that day, and as I said, Brett kept us in it, not for the first time this season, and certainly in the game we're going to talk about later on as well.
I was going to say we are going to come on to that as a bit of a theme a wee bit later on. The missing of Gregor Buchanan was something that a certain programme editor came up behind me and just muttered in my ear during the game, well, you can see who your player of the year is. And it sort of got me thinking on Dumbarton's player of the year, and I think Bucky would be up there. I think Aaron, who's obviously coming on the podcast, would be up there. I think Brett will be up there, who we'll touch on a fair bit with the clean sheet record, and maybe Calvin Orsay, Finlay Gray you could chuck in as well. Ryan Blair is the most underrated player in the squad, which is why I completely ignored him from that bit. But not to put you in an awkward situation, but if I was to put you on the spot right now, give you your ballot paper, who's getting your vote?
I could say Lynas just because he's coming on the podcast later, but that'd be a bit of a cop out. I'm like you, I kind of like the players that are under 18, just do the ugly work and keep Dumbarton thinking forward. So I think Ryan Blair would probably get my vote. The fact that he would sit there and let Div and Finlay make all these attacking run. He would sit there and kind of tidy up the midfield and break up the play and just keep it simple. He's capable of a nice 40-yard crossfield pass, which is quite satisfying to see. But when he knows it's not on, he'll just pass it to side and let the boys go and play, and he'll be ready there if the other team come back at us.
And also the sort of player who is never going to win a Player of the Year award voted for by fans. So Ryan, if we do a podcast Player of the Year, which I have no idea we might do, there's at least one vote for you, and we'll take our sort of unsung hero award. If there was one sort of positive from that Albion Rovers game that I just want to kind of focus on, it also came in midfield, and that was Luca Vata, or as I must call him, young Luca Vata, because Luca's only 16, he doesn't turn 17 I think until next month. He says, searching through his mind and then trusting the website that of course got Finlay Gray's birthday wrong. But yeah, Luca being the first player to step up from the new academy system at 16, 40 minutes he played in that Albion Rovers game, obviously a difficult pitch and not a time that you want maybe to get thrown on, but that's going to do him the world of good. Yeah,
obviously he had the odd minute or two in games before that coming on for the last 5 minutes to see a game out, but that was the first time we really seen a proper kind of glimpse of him. He kind of played like a young boy would, I think. He kept it safe. He still looked for the ball, but he'd get the ball and kind of pass it on. I think if he's coming into a team that was maybe winning 4 or 5-1 rather than losing 4 or 5-1, you'd see him be a wee bit more expressive than he would. But it's great to see him. Obviously, still involved in the squad every match day. He has been for about 6 months now, maybe.
Yeah, and then turn of the year, I think it was that he got called up.
So it's really good to see, and obviously it's another wee another wee nod of the hat to the guys at the youth squads.
Yeah, I mean, Declan Breeden played in, I think, 10 minutes at the end of the Rangers B game in August. I wasn't here for that, thank God. But he played in that. Luca's obviously playing, and hopefully it's something that we see a wee bit more of. I know Stevie Farrell's been very, very keen on that sort of youth academy and building players. You know, Dumbarton are never going to be able to go out and buy players. So if you're going to sort of build up your own, that's a great way for a club like Dumbarton to do it. And there's other clubs round about us. I'm looking at Stirling, where Ross McGeechy is obviously their captain. He's been there, I think this is his 10th, 11th season. Came through their sort of academy setup. I think Kyle Banner was the same. So it's kind of, when you're at a sort of lower level, it can be a good way of getting in talented players, potentially making a bit of money longer term on them, but also just building that connection between the club and the kind of local community, because fans, that 5-1 game, fans will have gone home pretty miserable, but the one player who they wouldn't have said a bad word against would have been Luca.
Yeah, and the way Farrell's speaking about him as well, he's got really high hopes for him. From what I understand, he's going to be part of the squad next season as well. What kind of contract and stuff we don't know yet, but and if he's getting regular football in with these guys, and being a 16-year-old in the change room with guys like Greg Weld and stuff must be brilliant for him, whatever side of the divide he is. But being with those experienced guys, he must be really pleased. It'll be great for his development. I
saw John Gemmell's very much taking him under his wing until he realised that he could quite comfortably be his son. The week after that Albion Rovers game, if that was a particular low point, came almost a high point in terms of, I think, as a footballing spectacle, was the 2-2 draw with Stirling Albion at Forth Bank. And going into that, I was feeling, I think as we all were, pretty downbeat. On the back of obviously losing 5-1 to a struggling team, and Suns really stood up to be counted that day. It was, I've written in my notes for it, probably the best game in terms of as a game of football to watch of the season. It had action, it had drama, it was unpredictable. I think both sets of teams left absolutely everything out there, and it had everything that you really would have wanted from a top of the table clash.
Yeah, if you're a neutral, you'd really enjoyed that game. Obviously for us kind of want a certain result, you can never just enjoy it for that. You're always on edge, but as a neutral you'd have enjoyed it. I think from a Dumbarton point of view, everything we weren't against Albion, we were against Stirling. Up for every tackle, flying challenges, when we're allowed anyway, because the referee, I remember, liked a wee card or two. It kind of set the tone early on, but as you say, it was a kind of traditional top of the table clash, a bit different from the game we see on Tuesday night, which we'll get to, but in terms of, as you say, goals, cards, flashpoints, there was loads going on. It was a really enjoyable game. It was
an absolutely fantastic advert, I think, for that sort of, for League 2 football. And like, we obviously, Chris does a podcast with us and does the stream, but I think that's one of the first away games that he's been to with Dumbarton. He came up, because obviously I live up that way, and we sort of made a day of it. We went out for lunch. He was getting seriously into it. I think that 3 years of doing the stream has sort of started to rub off, and you know, I saw the way he celebrated Finlay Gray's goal, that's all I'll say, and I don't think he'd be celebrating a Blades goal even just quite as much as that at Wembley today. That
was a great moment when Finlay scored, just in terms of moments of the season, kind of almost the way the goal happened as well, the way the ball sat up to him and he struck it into the net and ran over to the fans. It was a brilliant moment, even though we couldn't hold on to the lead. It was really good to see, and obviously we conceded obviously 2 goals against Stirling Albion again, which I don't know what it is about corners, because it's not even if they're fantastic corners, they're into good areas, but 9 times out of 10 you'll see us defend them. It's just Stirling seem to have our numbers when it comes to corners. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and it's not even like they're a huge physical team. So I looked at Aron's team the other week, and I don't know if it's because you're kind of pitch level at Gallowbank. I thought they've got some really big guys in that team. Like, Stirling just look like a normal team. Like, they're maybe not dissimilar to us. I think Robert Thompson, I did have a wee kind of word with him afterwards about this knack that he has of scoring against us. He did it for Stennis Junior last season, he's done it a few times for Stirling this season. Like, this needs to stop. We were nothing but nice to him in his time here. Like, okay, he had a kind of difficult spell over a winter where I may have slagged him off quite relentlessly on a certain football forum, but at the end of the season I loved the guy, and if you'd just like to be a wee bit nicer to us, that would be greatly appreciated.
Chris's ear tells the stats today of how many goals he scored against us. I heard it in the commentary the other day. Was it
yes.
8 or 9 goals?
He's only got more goals against Ayr United than he has against Dumbarton, and I think he's only scored against us since he's left. I don't think he ever scored against us before he signed for us, so he's certainly got a fair few goals, and obviously he didn't have a fantastic season with Steny last year, but still scored against us in the one game we played against Steny last year. Another thing that's maybe worth touching on is Ross McLean's goal, which I don't think at the time, until I watched the highlights back, I appreciated how good a header that was. I mean, he's sort of going back the way and just generates that power onto it to get it to dip right in front of Blair Curry, skip off the surface. That was a really good striker's finish from a guy who's not a striker.
Yeah, kind of long foot's the goalkeeper, and by putting it back across goal, I think Liquor is maybe expecting something else. But Ross McLean's capable of that. He was hitting a wee bit of form before he got injured, which was a real shame because I think he scored against Stranraer a couple of weeks prior as well. He was hitting some form and obviously signed up for the new season as well, which we'll talk about later, which is really good news. He can play in a couple of positions across that front line. He's led the line well. He always just seems he does a job when called upon.
Yeah, I saw I would say a mixed reaction to Ross McLean's signing, and I think fans maybe need to be a wee bit careful what they wish for, because that's 2 seasons Ross McLean's been at the club, and both seasons he's contributed a combined double figures in goals and assists. Yeah. There's not an awful lot of players that you can count on to do that every year, and if you look at how many games he's missed this season with injury, and to be fair, last season he missed a fair few games as well, like he got 9 goals last season, I think he's on 5 this season, plus I think 4, 5, 6 assists, something like that. So he's touching double figures in assists and goals combined. Like, that's very, very useful. And if you can get Ross McLean to have a consistent run of starts and keep him fit for a season, there's no reason why that can't be, a combined 15 goals and assists, or maybe even more than that. A consistent run in a one position as well would help him. Obviously, we've seen him get a run of games in the team, but maybe out in the left for 2 games, then up front for a few, then back out in the left and the right. So if we can get him kind of going in one position, really make a spot of the team his own, I think he will kind of excel. So after that came a midweek game against Forfar Athletic, Sun's bogey team this season, and they remain Sun's bogey team this season. Now, I kind of had the fear after the Stirling game, because you saw the effort that the guys had put in. A lot of them were looking dead on their feet. Obviously, Calvin Orsi at the end went off with what I hoped was just like fatigue, just knackered, but it turned out that he had picked up an injury in that one. And Suns were able to name just 3 players on the bench, which was far from ideal, especially when I don't think even everyone who started was quite fully fit or fully sharp. After the, let's call it the pulsating action of the Saturday, that Forfar game was back down to earth with a bit of a bump. It was indeed, and you couldn't help but feel really sorry for the team that day. I think you look at the result and think poor result, which yes it is. It's a game the match should have been targeted to win. It would have put us back on top of the league. It would have been a real kind of sign of intent for the rest of the season. But couldn't help but feel sorry for the team. Obviously missed a penalty. I think we hit the post and the bar a couple of times, one off the line, one off the bar from 6 yards for Ross McLean. Really unlucky, and I remember we spoke to Faz after the game. I think we said teacher's never seen him that low, even going back to last season as well. What happened, he just seemed so flat, because the players did do everything apart from put the ball in the back of the net. It was really disappointing. It was one of those games that someone had said to me afterwards that any other day that could have been 5-1, 5-2 or something like that, but it was just, and it sounds so daft to talk about luck or whatever else, but you know what, ultimately football I think does come down to that at times, and it was just that wee bit of luck deserted Suns. A good save from Mark McCallum, but also from the penalty, but also chances that were being missed that really shouldn't have been missed, and it was being missed across the team. It wasn't like one player had a stinker. It was like maybe a chance would fall to one guy and he put it over the bar, someone else, and he'd hit it straight at the keeper. It just felt like it was one of those days in front of goal, and it's so strange thinking back that, you're right, Suns could have gone back to the top of the league at that point, and here we are, just under a month later, and top of the league seems like an absolute mile away. That seems like a very distant memory now. I just got back from Krakow that day after the stag do for series, so I don't have a huge recollection of the game. Lucky you. I just remember the missing chance after chance after chance. Really disappointing, and as I say, putting us back on top like that point would have been huge for the rest of the season. That was the last game in March, and we'll just touch quickly on March's C&G Systems Player of the Month, who was Peter Grant. Now, Peter Grant came in obviously in the deal that saw Ryan McGeever go over to Clyde on loan till the end of the season, and I think, Peter Grant has made that position in left centre half very much his own. He's became a huge favourite with Suns fans. He's knocked Stuart Carswell out the team. I know Carswell's had an injury, but he's not looking like he's likely to get any time soon with the sort of performances that Peter Grant's putting in. How impressed have you been with him since he joined up? Yeah, he's been very nice. He's made the spot his own. It's always satisfying to see a right left-footed centre half combo. It's always good for your team. He's performed a good track with Bucky. They look really good together. I think he was quite worthy of his player of the month. He's been unlucky that the results haven't always showed the performances he's put in. Maybe not keeping clean sheets in every game, maybe not winning games, but in terms of performance player wise, I think he was well worth his player of the month for that. Yeah, I think it's quite unfortunate in a way that if you were to look at the raw stats, which I did last night, Peter Grant's points per game ratio is actually pretty poor. I think he's one of the worst in the squads, but it's almost that's just an unfortunate link that he's came in at a time when it feels like everyone else has been injured at least at some point, or everyone else has had to drop out the team, and he's been really unfortunate. I've been so impressed by him, but particularly how loud he is. I mean, he's coming into a team as a lone player Now, obviously, he's experienced enough. He's not going to come in and just be quiet and be like an 18-year-old that you get on loan from whoever. But he's coming in and he's really, really bossing things around back there. And he's just, they talk about captains without the armband. That's exactly what Peter Grant has been, I think.
Yeah, I've got a few of them in the team, which is good, especially across the back line. You could make a case for anyone. Yeah, speaks for itself. Obviously, Bucky as well, and Martin McNiff, experience, brilliant.
Yeah, I have been very impressed by Peter Grant, and I imagine, he says, speculating that he might be a player that Stevie Farrell will be looking at keeping on in the summer, because he's made himself a very important player. 1st of April, April Fool's Day, and Aron Lynas scored, which prior to this season you would have thought was an April Fool, but he did actually score. He's making a bit of a habit of scoring screamers for Suns as well this season, and seeing as he's on the podcast later, we'll talk about his goal from that game, because he strikes the ball when it's round about hip height.
No, brilliant. One you wouldn't expect from him, as you say. I think prior to coming, he had 1 goal in his career before he came to Dumbarton.
Yep.
And the 2 goals he scored this season, you wouldn't think that. You'd think he's a fullback that chips in with 4 or 5 a season, but it was a great goal. It's not always the size of the game you see from him. He's normally running into tackles, going up and down the line. He's not always shooting. It was a great hit, and obviously came at a really good time of the game, just before half time. After a bit of a drab half, looked like there wasn't much between the teams, so to get in front then was huge. But obviously the second half happened.
Yeah, the second half did happen, and I think the fear, and that was something that I'd said before the game, so I think I was on commentary with John Gemmell that day, and I'd said to him that it feels like we maybe need to have the game won by about the hour mark, because again, looking at the bench, you had Eden Lynch, who's obviously not played a lot of football, you had Rusty McLean, and you had Luca Vata. That was it. That was Suns' options from the bench. That was the extent of them, and you felt like Stenny maybe had a wee bit more. Sure enough, Stenny bring on Ewan O'Reilly and Tam Orr. Ewan O'Reilly sets up a goal for Gavin Riley.
Yeah.
What a signing Gavin Riley is for League 2, by the way. But anyway, and then Tam Orr grabs the winner, and it was in that period where it just felt like if you could have just stopped the season now, people would have been quite happy with that, because it felt like for all the good work of the previous 9 months, basically, I think Stevie Farrell said it the other night, like a tough few weeks. What was it?
In the space of 10 days, it's kind of just falling apart. Yeah, it's been really unfortunate. You don't want to sit here and blame injuries and the pitch and whatever, but you can't deny they've got a factor. We're doing so well before that, and then obviously going into games with 3-4 subs, obviously, and those subs are a 16-year-old, a right back and a striker. It's not ideal guys to call upon. But it's a really unfortunate 10 days has put us in a bad position, which has been a shame.
Yeah, and it feels so harsh on the guys, but I mean, to a degree, you have to say fair play to Stirling Albion. Like they're undefeated since the first weekend in December. That's incredible. At any level of football, I think Chris had said the other day that the only clubs with the longer unbeaten run were, he says, trying to remember this, Celtic, Dunfermline, and Burnley.
Yeah.
So you're in Dunfermline, who are by far the biggest club. Falkirk fans are going to like this one. Who are by far the biggest club in League One. Take cover. You've got Burnley, who are managed by Vincent Kompany, who I think is going to go on to have a cracking career, and you've got Celtic. I won't make a comment about biggest clubs in the country, because Falkirk fans can come at me, but I don't want to get involved in the old firm nonsense. But you've had Celtic, who have been the dominant force in Scottish football in my lifetime now, I think, statistically. But anyway, if you're up in that sort of company, you're going to win a league. It's really, really that simple. And you could point and say, well, maybe they've been a bit fortunate, like they've not lost Carrick with injury. If you were to take, I'm trying to think of the players that Suns have lost at various stages, so they've lost Carsey for a stage, so if you were to take out say Jordan McGregor from that Stirling Albion team, then you were to take out Dale Carrick because Declan Byrne, the top scorer, then you were to take out someone like Josh Cooper or Danny Denham out wide when Calvin Orsay was out injured, and
Jack Leach for Joe McKee kind of thing.
Leach for Joe McKee. If you were to take out, I'm trying to think who else, someone like even like Kieran Moore for Ross McLean, or Robert Thompson for Ross McLean, like they would be in a difficult situation. And I think Faz had said that if you were to take out the number of players that we'd lost from any other side in the division or any other side in the country, their form would dip.
It would struggle, yeah.
Yeah, and he says, stepping off in his soapbox because he's feeling in a confrontational mood today, clearly. But I think there does need to be a degree of understanding with that. And I've seen a lot of fans saying, well, you can't blame the injuries for X, Y and Z. Right. Dumbarton are always going to lose games this season. It was always going to happen, and there was games that Suns lost before the injuries. I'm looking at Elgin at home, where they were really, really below par, miles off the standard of being good enough. The Forfar game at the start of the season when Ryan McGeever got sent off after 10 minutes was a real disaster of a game. There were times like that. Even the Albion Rovers game, Suns didn't have injuries to blame. They were just outplayed by a better team. But that 3-game run where the bench was so sparse and when guys were playing through injuries, if you're sitting there on Facebook, on Twitter, in the stadium or whatever, and you're going, well, injuries have nothing to do with this, then you don't really know what you're talking about, I would suggest.
Yeah, we don't want to sit here and say that it's cost us the season, because that's not true. I think we probably in the past couple of podcasts, we did do Stirling a bit of a disservice. We sat here saying, oh, they scored late goals or scoring screamers, that the luck's going to run out at some point, but it hasn't. And you have to say fair play to that. Even last weekend when we won up at Bonnyrigg and looked like, 2 points, cut the gap, win on Tuesday, maybe back in it, and then 95th minute winner from Stirling. So you have to say fair play to them. We have done them a bit of a disservice.
It's something I'd said at the start of the season, where somebody had said Sun's 7-game winning run was down to luck, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, luck only takes you
7 games in a row.
No, luck only takes you so far. Luck might win you 2 games a season, and that's what you have to say about Stirling. Luck might win you 1 game in the 95th minute, but when you're scoring, I mean, I think Chris had said to me, it actually felt worse than it was, but they scored quite a few late goals, really important late goals as well. The winner, Jack Leach's winner against Bonnyrigg, got fourth bank a couple of weeks ago, and then obviously Dale Carrick at the weekend. Greg Spence got one, I think, in the last 2 minutes at Bonnyrigg away. Like, that's... Well,
up it's Glenard, they saved a penalty in the last minute as well, so it's big moments at both ends of the park. It's kind of, the whole team's kind of got them over the line. Yeah,
and that's not luck. If they were scoring one last minute winner, that's luck. If they're scoring consistent goals in the last minute, then they're a team who fight to the last minute, and I don't think anyone can begrudge them.
No.
The league, you can for their fans patter on Twitter, which is really turgid stuff, but you can't begrudge their football team a very, very well deserved league title. And I'd said in the stream, and I won't start talking about Stirling Albion too much, but it's about time they got back up. Like, they've been in League 2 for far too long.
Too big to be down where they are. Just going back to as well, we spoke when Kai Forling left them at the start of the season, or in January, we said, that's the kind of, the wheels will fall off for Stirling bus now, but the guys like Jack Leach, who we spoke about, he's stepped up, and he's really impressed me every time I've seen him this season. That kind of missed kick against us aside in the Tweech game, guys like that have kind of stepped up in his absence, and they've not really replaced Forling, I don't think, particularly.
No.
They've just all kind of huddled round and got over the line.
Yeah, unbeaten since Kai Fotheringham left, which I don't think any Beano's fan would have like, Kai who? Sorry. The last of the sort of miserable games that we'll touch on was the 8th of April, and it was that 3-1 defeat to Aran Athletic at Gallowbank, and 3-1, as Faz said, and as I think every Suns fan would agree, flattered Suns at half time. We walked past each other, said no words, and just sort of puffed out our cheeks and acknowledged each other that 3-0 at half time was very fortunate.
Yeah, sometimes football fans will say, it was 3 at half time, it could have been 6 or 7. This could have been 6 or 7 or 8. Brett Long made 3 or 4 outstanding saves, or missing shots from 6 yards. It was absolutely brutal, and Faz said could have been double figures. And it was true. Saying that at our end, it's 3-0. We had a couple of good chances right at the end of the first half that maybe makes the second half a bit different, but that first half, it was just a kind of capitulation the last couple of weeks. It you could almost see it coming.
Yeah, it didn't feel great going down there, and then it just got worse after about 75 seconds when Willie Gibson scored the opener. I put in Pine Bovril at half time that I think Brett Long put in one of the best single half performances of goalkeeping that I've ever seen from a Dumbarton goalkeeper.
11 shots on target in the first half for Manning.
And they scored 3. Now, granted, a lot of that was down to poor finishing, but Brett Long saves, I think, 3 1-on-1s.
And there's a double save right at the end of the first half as well, which was as good as you'll see.
The one where he got it in quite a sensitive area, I think, as well. So putting his body on the line even at 3, that performance from Brett Long was very, very positive. The second half, as any manager will tell you, it's easy to play when you're 3-0 down. But Suns did make a couple of decent changes. They were able to bring on Calvin Orsi and David Wilson, and obviously Declan Byrne came back on earlier. I think earlier than anyone would have wanted in that game. Yeah, half an hour in he came on. But that suddenly, and it's something Faz had said afterwards, but suddenly you started to see a wee bit more of the Dumbarton team from maybe 2 months previous, rather than the team that we'd seen for the last month. Yeah,
there was a bit of a structure when you see that, and he's right when he says, or you're right when you say that any team can play it, so it's easy to kind of just go through the motions, and I'm sure Annan were kind of the same. They've probably just sat on 3-0. We'll not go too far forward. We'll just kind of sit on this. But you could see the kind of the shape come back together. It's been so successful, that kind of 4-1-4-1 formation. The guys know their roles and stuff. And as you said, Deco coming on early did kind of give me the fear a wee bit. Especially when he came back for the Stenhouse-Muir game, then we'd missed him again for another month or so. You kind of thought, on a plastic park on a hot day, it's an hour of football is maybe not going to suit him, but he seems to have got through it okay, and he's still in the team just now, which is good news.
If there was one other positive as well as Brett Long's performance from that, it was David Wilson scoring a brilliant free kick, which I was right behind and thoroughly enjoyed watching going in. He's obviously another player who signed a new deal and extended his contract, and I think Dumbarton are a better team when David Wilson plays. It's really that simple.
Yeah, he's really clever with the ball. He kind of knows when to move it about. He's good at both sides of the game, obviously, in beside Blair. Blair does most of the dirty work, but Wilson's not afraid to get stuck in as well. He's got really good feet. I think he had a great game on Tuesday against Stirling. I wasn't here, but I watched the stream. I thought he was brilliant. Just in terms of getting forward, another loads of energy. Him and Finlay make a great wee combo in the middle of the park. I think when you've got guys rushing into the box from all angles, you're going to cause opposition team problems.
He says, clobbering his microphone with excitement. Yeah, David Wilson's performance in the first half against Stirling especially was absolutely excellent. I thought he was the best player in the park. He's obviously not played a lot of football in recent weeks, and he tired off and then got taken off, I don't know, about 15-20 minutes from time. But yeah, I'm pleased that we've got that deal over the line, because he's a player. I've always said it with David Wilson, that he's a player who infuriates me, but he can flick in like 10 seconds from being the best player on the park to doing something really, really inexcusable to then being the best player on the park again. But this season, I don't know if it's the extra experience, obviously down a couple of levels, but like we're seeing the good bits of David Wilson a lot more than we did in his first spell, and he's a lot more consistent. Yeah,
he scored some like clever goals as well. I remember the one on Christmas Eve against East Fife, the way he took it, just kind of that forward run as we spoke about, getting forward into the box and a great finish. He seems to add that to the game. I remember the first time he was here, he was a wee bit, maybe not scared to be in the ball, but he just kind of get it and pass it along and keep it moving, which isn't always a bad thing, but you can see how much he has improved in his time kind of down at this level.
Right, that's all the defeats and draws out the way, so we'll get on to the first game of that last month that Jack Crawford has missed, and that was the 2-0 victory against Bonnyrigg at New Dundas Park. And I've just put, so I keep wee notes after every game so I can keep track of stats and things like that. And my first note is, that's far more like it.
Yes. and Farrell said after the game, it's no coincidence when you've got your players back in the shape they like, as we've seen in the second half up at Annan, you'll get a performance like that. Really hard place to go. I think Bonnyrigg were one of the form teams going into the game. I think they had 15, maybe not 12 points of 18 or something. They were up there in the form leagues anyway. They'd won a few games in a row down against teams at the bottom, obviously still fighting for their lives. Bit of a contrast from the Annan game, who are going for the playoffs, but really hard place to go, as we've seen in the past. I don't think we've not seen us win there then.
That's the first ever Dumbarton win in Bonnyrigg.
Yeah,
I mean, there's only been 2 previous visits, but it's club history being made.
Yeah. So the penalty decision was peculiar. Justice was probably done with that. I don't understand why the Bonnyrigg players just accepted it.
No, I would have completely lost my head. I think it was Johnny Stewart who was penalised, and he actually got booked for a tackle later in the half, so he's quite lucky he wasn't booked for that. But if I was him, my head would have completely gone.
Dave just fell over the ball.
Yeah, I think he sort of slipped and then hit it with his standing leg and then swiped it with his other leg, and he doesn't even look. I mean, he's just obviously a bit like, what happened there? Fell kicking a ball up quite a steep hill, and the referee's given it. And yeah, I think justice was absolutely done with that being saved by Paddy Martin. As frustrating as it was, because Suns had actually merited a goal with that first half, or the first sort of 15 minutes of that performance. They could have scored a couple. Peter Grant had a header that dropped just wide. Declan Byrne
was in early on.
After about 15 seconds, David Wilson sent Declan Byrne on goal, and I kind of looked at it, and you have those games where you look and you think, alright, okay, yeah, I can see that we might have a bit of a chance here. Like, I think we've worked on how to, breach this Bonnyrigg defence. You know what Declan Byrne will do.
Getting behind.
It was something that Chris had said as well, watching the highlights with me in the car prior to the Stirling Albion game, was like, it's the first time in a wee while I've seen a striker point to where he wants the ball, make the run, and the midfielder drop it right to him. Like, it's not something we see an awful lot. And actually, the last time that Declan Byrne did that off the top of my head, was East Fife away when he scored that goal. Ryan Blair picks up the ball and he basically points to where he wants it. Ryan Blair squeezes the ball round the gap, sends him in, and he puts it into the bottom corner.
Yeah, he does give you that. He's got something that the rest of the strikers don't kind of offer you, which is good to have those options. But I think with Byrne, you've got that completely unique. He's just going to run for as long as he's on the park. He doesn't give defenders a minute's rest. Him coming back and probably coincides with the form we've been on.
Yeah, and Declan Byrne, another player. I feel like we're just rattling through them, but Declan Byrne, another player who's committed his future to the club. I can't remember a time where Suns had 8 players signed up for the new season. I think it's 8. 8 players signed up for the new season, a month before the season ends, and that might get even more later today.
Who knows?
You have to keep listening to find out about that, though. That was just a really decent away day. I thoroughly enjoyed my trip to Bonnyrigg last week, and obviously it was capped off in injury time by Russell McLean getting his first goal since February. And I said to Andy Scott afterwards, I was like, that's the guy. That's the guy.
I've seen him do that a million times. Yeah.
He used to do that to us all the time.
Yeah.
He picked up the ball and it was like he was just playing his own game. It was like men against boys. Great wee touch. Turn. Okay. I think it was Callum Conley was the Bonnyrigg defender who decided that he was
half challenge kind of.
Yeah, he wasn't really going to engage.
No.
He just shrugs off a challenge. I think I put in my report breezed beyond the challenge, which I quite like using. Breezed beyond the challenge and just tucked it in at Paddy Martin's near post. Like that's exactly what you want to see from Russell McLean.
Yeah, you can see what it meant to him as well. Great pictures from Andy of Rusty right in the camera. And the type of quality that we've seen him do countless times in the past against us, so good to see him do it for us. Obviously he scored against Annan, bit of a break between his goal, bit of a gap between his goals, but good to see him back on, and kind of there's nothing more I love more than a 2-0 last minute goal. The last minute winners are great, but you've always got that fear when they could still launch it in and get it, but 2-0, you know the game's done, kind of 3 points in the bag, brilliant. Yeah,
and I would love to see Russell McLean hit a wee bit of form going to playoffs. Firstly, because I think he'd be a nightmare for any defender to deal with, but secondly, because he's taken a fair bit of stick, and I don't think it's been entirely unwarranted. Like, I understand fans get frustrated, but he's maybe in the Peter Grant kind of mould that he's unfortunate. He came into a team at the time where we were low on players, where maybe he wasn't getting the sort of service he would have got if he had a fully fit David Wilson behind him, if he had Declan Byrne alongside him, or Calvin out wide or whatever. And I think it'd be great for him, and I think it would be something that I really, really hope he's determined to do, to just prove people wrong, prove the doubters wrong. Like, you're taking a fair bit of stick from the fans, he'll hear it, he'll know it, go out there and prove them wrong, because that would, certainly if I'd been anywhere near good enough to play at any respectable level, it would really fire me up, and I'm like, I'll show you. And I think you saw that outpouring of emotion after his goal when he was just like, yeah, you know what, I can do this.
I can do it, yeah. I followed that Bonnyrigg game kind of old school, so I couldn't make the game, so I was checking Twitter every so often, and I seen penalty Dumbarton come up. And then I was watching Soccer Saturday with Jeff and the boys, just waiting for the goal to pop up. And a few minutes passed by. I'm like, I should probably go back on Twitter and write enough penalty saved. But there's nothing better than watching Soccer Saturday and seeing the team come up without having any idea that they've scored. It's like being back in the day. It was brilliant.
I know, I don't think I've experienced that feeling in a very, very long time.
Yeah, it's good.
You know, the one that kind of sticks in my mind, and I don't even know if I think it would have been at a Gillette Soccer Special, a midweek, the season we won the 3rd division, I think. It might be in the 3rd division, or it might be in the playoff season of 2011-12, and it was a game up at Forfar in a midweek.
We won 2-0 on a Tuesday night.
We won 2-0, and I remember watching that and just being like lying in bed, just waiting on the score to come. And it was probably a Champions League night or something like that, so you'd have like the AC Milan score or the Bayern Munich score or whatever, and then you just got like
4-0 Dumbarton on Ross Clark.
Yeah, just like, yes! Oh, it was an amazing film. That's giving me proper flashbacks. Wow. I feel like I kind of need to take myself off Twitter and just watch a game on Soccer Saturday at some point again, just to get that feeling. But
I finished 0-0 with it.
Yeah, we'll get beaten 5-0 and I'll be away at the house for a walk, or just to get away. Final game that we will touch on before the bit that you've all been waiting for, the arrival of Aron Lynas. It will be Tuesday night's 0-0 draw with Stirling Albion. And if the last game was pulsating and a fantastic advert for League 2 football, this one had my esteemed colleague Stuart McFarlane at the Stirling Observer struggling to fill a 400-word match report. There wasn't a lot that happened. I actually put that I don't think either set of fans could complain too much about their players. I think there was a lot of effort. I remember Jim Duffy, and it was something I think Morgan Neal had touched on as well, saying defending is underrated and like people don't appreciate good defending. There was some really good defending in that game. Defending is quite boring, but like Peter Grant's performance was excellent. I thought Jordan McGregor's performance for them was excellent. Like, if you're into watching centre halves dominate strikers, then you would have really enjoyed that game. Yeah,
it's a very cagey affair. It's probably a good way to put it. I don't think either side wanted to lose the game, particularly obviously for Dumbarton. We didn't want Stirling to come here and win the league title after being in a battle with them all season, and for Stirling they probably didn't want Dumbarton to get a wee glimpse of the door being half open again. So you could say both teams maybe not playing for a point, but maybe not committing bodies forward as much as you'd hope. From the back point of view, Calvin Orsi I thought was great as well. We gave Cameron Clark a torrid time down the right. Just sometimes missing that final touch, Calvin, but some good deliveries into the box. I think it was him that nearly set up McLean late on. A couple of good chances to win late on, which obviously with Rusty and Deco as well. So a decent performance. Obviously the 1,000 and whatever it was punters out here probably didn't come to see a 0-0 at the 5th time of asking of that game. We should have known that was going to happen, shouldn't we? 4 postponements, it was always going to finish 0-0.
It was absolutely always going to finish 0-0.
But what a night it was! What a great decision to get it played.
I mean, the previous night we'd left the stadium and obviously it was soaking in the ground and it was kind of sleeting when I was driving up the road, and then I arrived sunglasses on, arrived, sat in the car, too warm, with window down. I did think about putting the roof down, but I thought, no, I'll hold off doing that. Window down, sat in the car park waiting for Chris, just like, this is fantastic. Yeah. Why did anybody want this game played in a midweek in February? And if I was a Stirling Albion fan, that's exactly the conditions I'd want to win the league in.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and if they'd got over the line, that would have been a really, really memorable one for them. Thankfully they didn't, because I don't like seeing other teams being successful in our own patch. So thankfully they didn't, but you'd expect that they'll get the job done today against Annan, and if not, then well, they've got 2 other times to get the job done, so they'll get over the line. That game also saw Sun set a clean sheet record, which you'd put in the group chat, which I've forgotten now, but I think it's 16, 17 this season, he says.
I'll get the group chat.
If only someone put an article on the website that we could quickly reference whilst I fill the dead air as it comes up. But yeah, Sunset last season really, really struggled for clean sheets. Now, off the top of my head, it was certainly single figures, and I want to say it was 4 or 5 in all competitions, and it was a massive part of the reason that Dumbarton went down last season, was that inability to keep the door closed at the back. This year, and I like the fact that it's shared between Brett Long and Harry Brown as well. Like they both, Harry Brown is kept 2 clean sheets in 3 games this season. We won't mention the third one because it throws out his average, but for an 18-year-old kid, I think he was 18 when he made his debut up at Peterhead, to keep 2 clean sheets and be man of the match in that game against Raith as well,
was excellent, wasn't
he was absolutely outstanding. It's great, he can be part of that. Jack, you've fired up the website.
17 it was, so 16 was the previous tally, which was the promotion winning season of 08-09 with Mark McGowan and David McEwen. So the tune of Brett's got 15, and obviously Harry's got 2 from the cup games.
Yeah, so that's a tremendous achievement for the 2 of them, and Brett obviously signed up for the new season as well. Is, you know, that was a fantastic bit of business getting that one over the line last summer, because he is, I would say, the best goalkeeper Dumbarton have had in a permanent deal since Alan Martin.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, Kevin Dabrowski obviously is worthy of an honour in there, but he only played about 9 games and he was never actually ours, which was a great shame.
Yeah.
And the fans never got to see him live, which was also a great shame, because he was superb to watch, great fun, hilarious,
and great to listen to,
incredibly loud. One of the few highlights of that COVID season was hearing Kevin's sort of running commentary on games, and also I think fans would have loved him because he was just such a nice big guy. He was just a fantastic character. He was I miss Kevin.
He's doing well just now, Queen of South.
He is doing well at Queen of South, whose manager was sat in front of me the other night.
Hopefully taking notes on Stirling Albion players rather than us.
Hopefully some Stirling Albion players really caught his eye, and he wasn't looking at anybody who was playing in Dumbarton colours with any sort of fanciful eyes. I did message someone last night and say I fear he could be treating us as a pick and mix, which would be really, really disappointing. Anyway, that's us recapped the month that was, March and a bit of April, and for the most part fairly miserable. Join us in part 2, where, if you're watching the stream, that man there will be filling that kit. Well, he won't be doing it in a full kit, that would be a bit weird, but that man there will be sat here, and we have some exciting news to bring you on Aron Lynas' future at Dumbarton Football Club.
Now for the bit you've all been waiting for. Aron Lynas.
Be able to see, if you're watching on the stream, we have taken Aron Lynas' spirit from his kit, which is over there, and we've morphed it into the real person who's now sat in front of us. Aron, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thanks very much for having me.
And the first question I'll ask you is, and I like to ask everyone this, have you done anything like this before in the ball boys room at a lower league stadium?
No, this is the first. I done one at Albion Rovers, so I've had a wee bit of practice.
It wasn't quite as salubrious as
no.
the mascot's head and your kit backwards on a mannequin.
No, this is... No, it's a wee bit different to this now, yeah.
I'm absolutely... I'm looking forward to the feedback from people when they watch this on YouTube, and if you are listening to it on Spotify, which I think most people will do, please go on and look at the stream just for the kind of slightly surreal image of Aron's kit backwards on a mannequin, which looks sort of fantastic, but also really, really odd, and I can't get my head around it. Anyway, Aron, you've made yourself, I said, probably the most popular member of Sun's squad this season, which has hopefully paid off all your teammates. But first of all, how much have you enjoyed your time at Dumbarton? Because you've settled in very, very quickly.
It's been really good, and for day dot, the boys have been great. I knew some of them already, like Big McGeever, Calvin Horsey, Ali Love, so I'd already played with them. So yeah, it was really, really good, and I was delighted for day dot.
I'm wanting to sort of, in these podcasts, dive back a wee bit, because normally I'll talk to you post-match and we'll talk about the game, or the game's coming up, or the season and all that kind of stuff, and people can read that in our respective newspapers, but I always like to do a wee bit more sort of deeper digging in these sort of podcasts. So take me right back to the start of your footballing career, and who was your first boys club, when did you start playing, and all that sort of thing?
My first boys club, I started off at Inverkeithing United, and actually I started off as a goalkeeper, and I was doing that for a couple of years, and then just one year I decided I fancied playing outfield just to see what it was like and see if I was any good at it, and then I done that for a season or two, and then I got picked up by Cowdenbeath. So yeah, that's where it all started for me in the professional football.
Were you any good in goals? Like, do you think that you could have had the career you've had outfield in goals?
I have thought about that, to be fair. I thought I was actually not bad in goals. I thought I was okay. But I just fancied a change. I just wanted to be a bit more involved in the game, I think, and that's why I wanted to go out in the field. And yeah, it's paid off. But whether I would have made it as a goalkeeper, who knows? I don't know.
We've had injuries everywhere else this season, so if Brett gets sent off one game and Harry's out, are you first man to step up then?
I'd definitely throw my name in there. Definitely, why not? Definitely.
I'm going to text Eric Phillips immediately, and I'm seeing over the summer that we can do a wee thing on like a goalkeeping session with you and Eric, and I just want to see how it goes. I'm just really interested. So that's what you've signed yourself up for after being on the podcast for 4 minutes. So that's the risk of saying these things. Talk me through that sort of first move to Cowdenbeath then, when you were, what age would you have been at that sort of time? And
I think it was about 13, 14 when I started there. So yeah, I was there for a good few years. I done my YTSs there, done that for 2 years, and then signed my first pro contract with the club as well. So yeah, really enjoyed it. It was good.
That would have been a strong period for Cowdenbeath as well, because them and Sons were kind of two of the best part-time clubs in the country around about that time, if my timing's correct in my head, because I know you're a similar age to me and a similar age to Jack, and that was kind of when we were growing up that Cowdenbeath had a really good team. So who were the big names at Cowdenbeath at that time?
There was a few, to be fair. Kane Hemmings, Greg Stewart, who've went on to have really, really good careers, and they were very, very good players at Cowdenbeath at the time. Do you know what I mean? You could just tell they had a lot of ability to go and progress further and play a lot higher, and they've proved that. So just to be around the boys full time, do you know what I mean, getting that experience and learning from them, it was good.
As people will be able to tell from your accent as well, like we said, you're the first foreign guest that we've had on the podcast, because you're from all the way over in the east. Whereabouts is it you're actually from, and why have you ended up at Dumbarton and Albion Rovers? Because that's quite unusual.
Yeah, you've maybe been better putting a bit subtitles on this so people can understand me, but no, it's, to be fair, any club that I've been at, I've had a bit of travelling to do. I've played at Brecon and stuff as well, so it's just think I like seeing a bit of the Scottish countryside, to be honest. I think that's what it must be. But no, it's good. You know, every club that I've been at, I've loved my time there. So
yeah, well, you obviously moved from Cowdenbeath to Alloa Athletic, and I was looking it up before you came in. Your Alloa debut was against Rangers. That's kind of thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah, I wasn't even expecting it, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? Even being on the bench, I was training really, really well with the club and doing quite well, and then, do you know what I mean? You go and prepare as you do just expect to be, not, you don't expect to be on the bench, but just even be involved in the squad. You know what I mean? You've still got to prepare right and do the right things. And then he named his team and I was on the bench, so yeah, the nerves started to kick in a wee bit, and yeah, and then he gave me the call. It was in the second half, and he told me to warm up, and I couldn't quite believe it, to be honest. I thought he'd said the wrong name or something. I was like, nah, I don't think it's me. But it was, what an experience. It was great.
Who were you up against in the Rangers team?
On my side, they brought me on at right wing, so I don't know, I think he made a mistake there as well, to be honest. But it was Lee Wallace, he was playing left back, so it was a wee bit of a challenge.
Kept you busy.
Imagine that drop. What age would you have been at that point? Just
I was 19 at the time.
So dropping a 19-year-old making his debut in against Lee Wallace. Yeah, good luck.
Welcome to professional football. All the best.
Aye, no, good luck with that one. That must have been quite an exciting time to be at Alloa, because that would have been the league that had Rangers, Hearts, Hibs would have been kicking around at that sort of time. Like, that must have been a really good time to be round about a club like Alloa, because it was at Dumbarton as well. Like, you never really think at this level you're going to be sharing a league with these clubs.
No, do you know what I mean? It was a really, really good competitive league, and do you know what I mean? A lot of good clubs in that. So yeah, it was a really exciting time. Yeah.
You went out on loan to East Stirling a couple of months after that. Talk me through that time, and how important was a loan spell? Like, if you're not playing a lot of adult football, if you're maybe playing, I don't know if there was a reserve league at that sort of time or whatever, but getting out, getting first team football, getting abuse from the stands, coming up against, you know, I guess guys like John Gemmell in League 2 as well, who just look at a 19-year-old and start rubbing their hands. Talk me through how important that time was for you. Yeah,
it was massive. Do you know what I mean? I played, obviously I came on against Rangers for Alloa, but I wasn't getting that game time that I needed, and I felt at that age it was crucial that I was playing, do you know what I mean, week in, week out football, and to go League 2, it was good. Do you know what I mean? As you've just basically explained it there, the physicality of the game, and excuse me, getting involved and getting the minutes, and, do you know, experiencing these leagues and showing what it's all about and what you need to do, and it was good, and I feel like it was crucial for myself.
everyone knows that you're quite a combative player. You aren't somebody who'll shirk a challenge. It took you 6 games at East Stirling to get your first career red card, and that game finished. It was a 5-3 defeat to East Stirling. I actually found the highlights in really grainy quality on YouTube or Vimeo or something like that. Talk me through your first career red card.
Try to go through them all to remember one. There's been a few. Yeah, that's just how I've been. Do you know what I mean? I just like to get stuck in, and then, yeah, it was disappointing. Do you know what I mean? No one likes to get sent off, but that was just how I was at the time. I was determined every game. I wanted to win every game, and I would do everything I can to win the game, but maybe at times it was just a wee bit too much.
Do you think that's something that you've sort of calmed down this season? See, at the start of the season, and I don't mind saying this to you, there was times you were going in for tackles, and me and Jim McAllister, the announcer, especially, were going and it was fine, it was perfectly clean, but it was one of those ones that if you were just a fraction too late, we were going, no, he's alright. It seems like you've sort of calmed that down a wee bit. Is that something that you've noticed, or was that just, how things were at the start of the season?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I think it just comes with experience and managing the game. I get a bit better, and do you know what I mean? If you get sent off, you can't do anything on the park. Do you know what I mean? You're letting the boys down, you're letting the gaffer down. So I think it's just experience and learning the game that it's crucial that you've got 11 players on the park.
So after leaving Alloa, you moved to Brechin City, and that was a pretty successful time for Brechin. I think they had one season that was a bit iffy. They had the season that you came in would have been the season they got promoted, wasn't it? So that would have been a great time to be a Brechin City player, but it made way for a slightly more tricky time, shall we say. But we'll focus on the good times first of all. That Brechin team, I don't think anyone expected them to get promoted that season. They'd stayed up the season before, and they did it in the playoffs. And I remember watching it and thinking, I didn't imagine that Suns would be playing Brechin in the Championship next season. So talk me through what you remember from that time.
Well, do you know what I mean? At the start of the season, your main ambition is to have a successful one, and do you know what I mean? You always want to get promoted, but as you said, I don't think no one expected it. Us to be up there, but do you know what I mean? We had a really, really good season, and yeah, it was brilliant, and to get promoted in my first season there was amazing.
That season, or that final game, the 4-3 defeat to Alloa, where Brechin won it on penalties. Talk me through your memories from that, because you obviously played the whole game. You got booked as well, I can see from that. you played the whole game. That must have been just a real emotional roller coaster, because a penalty shootout, a 4-3 defeat, 4-all in aggregate. I mean, that's the biggest sort of pressure you can imagine on a player.
Yeah, definitely. I've never been in that place before where I'd like to get the chance to be promoted. So it was, do you know what I mean? That's running through your head the full game. You want to do well. You don't want to blow it at getting that far, and so yeah, it was amazing, and to do it was brilliant.
Were you up for it a bit more, the fact it was against Alloa, or did you see it in another game?
Yeah, because you kind of want to prove a point. Do you know what I mean? Getting let go, and you want to show what you can do or what you could have done for the club as well. So yeah, you get a bit of stick as well, but that's football, that comes with it. So yeah, that was great.
Did you realise that day that you played against Frank McEwen as well?
No, I didn't know.
No, neither did I until I looked at that. It's just going through the team lineups, because obviously Suns and Alloa, I feel like they kind of share players to quite a big degree. I was looking through it, like Scott Taggart, Callum Waters, Frank McEwen, Andy Graham. There's quite a strong Dumbarton link in that whole back four.
Yeah, there's a lot of experience in there, so I must have remembered me then.
You kind of stuck in his mind from that game. That sort of, what was the mood that summer at Brechin, obviously, because you'd gone up maybe about a bit against all odds, but I guess it was, same boat that Suns had been in, that Alloa were in, where it's nobody's expecting anything from you, so it's just you go out there and you give it your best, and there's not really any pressure.
Nah, not at all, because I don't think anyone expected us to be in that league to start with, so there was nothing there to really to lose. We just had to go and prove a point that we are a good side, so yeah, it was a great season to be in that league, yeah.
How difficult then was the season in the Championship in terms of, the results? It must be so hard going into a changing room every week and going to training every week and keeping boys motivated, and knowing the sort of character you are, like you're going to be one of the ones who's trying to keep them going, but going in every week when, it had been a real tough one on the park.
Yeah, it was hard, do you know what I mean? There was a lot of good full-time teams in that league, and we knew we were up against it being a part-time side, but we just had to keep believing every week that, we can do it, we're here for a reason. So yeah, it was disappointing, but do you know what I mean? The boys gave everything week in, week out, so I couldn't really ask for any more for anybody.
There was one game that looked like you were going to win, Brechin. It was here, and then some diddy went and get sent off.
I knew this was coming. I knew it was coming. That stayed with me for a while.
Because I remember you were so comfortable in that game as well. Dumbarton never looked like being anywhere near in control of the game or getting back into it, and then I think was it 10 minutes to go or something, you sent it off quite late on and the game kind of turned.
19 minutes if you want the official one.
That one stayed with me for a while because I felt like that game was ours. That was going to be our first 3 points and a chance to real kick on, and well done, Aaron.
It must be like, we've obviously joked a wee bit about red cards and things like that, but it must be, as a player, like, you go into the change room, especially after a game like that, and it must be so difficult because you feel like you've let your teammates down. And I'm not trying to lay this on you or try to bring anything back, but it's something you can only learn from as a player. But that feeling must just be horrible, like going into the change room after that.
Yes, it really does stay with you for a while, not just in the change room but going home and stuff as well. You feel like, why did you do that? But it's the heat of the moment as well at times, you know what I mean? It could be a real heated game and it just takes that one mistake, and it's hard because the boys have done so well and you're in control and it doesn't look like there's anything going to change to get beaten a game or something, and then something like that happens and then it can change just like that. So it definitely stays with you for a while. What
positive memories do you have from that season? Because there was a lot of games, I know Brecon picked up I think 4 points in the league all season, but there was a lot of games that were pretty close. There was also, I think the first day of the season or first weekend, a 2-2 draw with Livingston where Calvin Horsey scored twice.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen very often, but games like that, must be ones that you look back on pretty fondly.
Yeah, definitely. That just shows that we were able to compete in that league, and we did have a good side to play in that league, and no one should be writing us off. So yeah, looking back at games like that showed that we should have been there, basically. Considering being a part-time team and basically being a full-time league, it was great for us to show that we can compete against these big teams.
It's something that I think maybe Dumbarton fans especially don't understand fully, is how difficult it is being part-time in a full-time league. And obviously Sun's had those seasons, what was it, he says off the top of his 6-7 seasons in the Championship, where it became almost the norm that was just the level Dumbarton played at, and people, fans maybe took it for granted. But talk to me about how difficult it is when you're going, you're training twice a week, you're working full time away from football, and then you're coming up against Dundee United, Livingston, in your Alloa time, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs. Like, it must be so difficult when you've got boys coming in from a day's work, maybe been up since 6-7 in the morning, and they're playing against folk who have, had their meals prepared for them, have had a physio session, been for a wee swim, something like that. It must be so tough.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what I mean? Boys put a lot of time and effort into what they do playing part-time football. It's definitely not an easy thing, sacrificing their own personal time, family time, do you know what I mean? But they do it because they love the club, they love the game. So you've got to take their hat off to these guys that put so much into it, and it takes a lot to be where we are, being part-time, but you do it because you love it.
I was going to say that, like, what keeps you going? Because I sometimes look at it, especially at a kind of lower level, like, would I, so when my brother was at Clydebank, like, training twice a week, he wasn't getting paid, so, like, training twice a week, giving up every Saturday, it's such a huge commitment. Like, is it just that love of the game that keeps you going, that I evidently, A, I'm not good enough to have, but B, just, like, I can't see myself doing it, like, I would just be knackered.
Yeah, well, coming from a personal point of view, it's definitely for the love of the game, do you know what I mean? I want to do well with football, and that's my number one priority, but it's part-time, so you need to work as well. So, but yeah, you want to do it because you love doing it. You want to put that effort in. You want to make, even like doing a night or 2 nights a week yourself, just to get that extra training in you well and succeeding. So yeah, it's good.
How much of a sort of buzz do you get out of it? Like, just seeing, like, you obviously became a real fan's favourite. Like, I think your family know the fans quite well now. There's that sort of good relationship there. But it must be like a buzz that we can sort of only dream of, is like scoring and looking over into a busy stand and, like, I don't know, seeing your mum, your dad, your missus, whatever in the stand. That must be a phenomenal feeling.
When I score, aye. Yeah,
but you're quite prolific this season.
This season I've been it's no something. I tell myself I fancy my chances this week, but I mean, you can only keep believing. But no, this year I couldn't quite believe it. 2 goals in the one season. It's
both great goals as well.
I know. It's another thing I didn't even expect that. I'd normally think it'd be a deflection or a header or something. But yeah, no, I just felt like, do you know what I mean? If you don't shoot, you don't score. So.
It's taken you this long in your career to realise that, but now you've started doing it and you've realised you're actually not that bad at it.
I'm not bad, not bad.
I mean, your shots to goals ratio must be really, really high as well, because, like, I don't remember you shooting all that much other than the goals.
Nah, I need that, to be honest.
But like 4 shots, 2 goals.
Clinical.
The following season obviously wasn't a great one for Brecon either, but you did score your first career goal, which kind of nicely brings me on to that. Talk me through that 4-0 victory against Forfar. I've watched it. It wasn't as much of a screamer, shall we say, as the other ones that you've scored in your career, but yeah, that must have been a bit of a special moment to get that first career goal.
Yeah, it was massive, and in that game as well, they had the chance to go 0 up. I gave away a penalty in that game, so I was kind of like, oh shit, man. Here we go. But no, it was, do you know what I mean, we done really well that day, and to score my first goal as well, and in a derby as well, it was brilliant.
What are those Angus derbies like to play in? Because I think like Dumbarton don't really have a derby. There was obviously maybe like a wee bit of spice between the Stirling Albion games because of where they are in the league, and they're not that far away. But since the demise of Clydebank, and it's always been a kind of friendly rivalry between Dumbarton and Clydebank, there isn't really that rivalry, and I'm quite jealous of the Angus clubs having that. Yeah,
it's good there was a few, do you know what I mean, Arbroath as well, and it's to score in a derby, it just felt even better, do you know what I mean? And for me, it took that long for me to score, it was brilliant, so yeah, I really enjoyed it.
At the end of that season, Brecon obviously went down, and I think you moved on to Albion Rovers at the end of that time. Talk me through, I guess, first of all, the emotions of leaving Brecon. It had been a disappointing couple of years, but from everything I've read from their fans, when we did the SPFL article, what would it be, November, December time, where, this is really embarrassing, but I got asked to name my favourite player, which I find really cringy, especially because I have to talk to most of you on a weekly basis, and I'd gone conservative, like, well, the fans I would think would say Aron Lynas. Obviously it's my deep internal thoughts as well, but yeah, talk me through leaving Brecon, because that must have been a bit of a wrench for you when you'd made good relationships with the fans, where you'd maybe been frustrated at how it ended with that relegation.
Yeah, it was tough. The fans were great with me there as well, so you do have that bit of connection, and there's a bit of emotion in it as well. But do you know what I mean? If wherever you go next, you've kind of got to get your head down and fully focused on that.
You still look out for Brecon results and other teams you've been at in the past? Obviously Brecon have got a big game today as well.
Yeah, it's massive of them for today. Yeah, I do. To be fair, I do keep out and see how the other clubs are doing. So, but your main focus is the team that you're at. So I'm fully committed to here.
And you moved on to Albion Rovers. I suppose actually the travelling aspect, Albion Rovers is closer to you as well than Brecon. I have in my head that the east is one place and the west is one place, and I kind of live in the middle, so everywhere's an hour away from me. But talk me through the move to Albion Rovers. Why Albion Rovers?
There was a few clubs that had been interested at the time, but I just felt like Albion Rovers was the right choice for me at that time. So yeah, it was good. How
much did you enjoy playing there? Because I've always said it, I think if you were to wipe Dumbarton off the map, just say Dumbarton didn't exist, I think Albion Rovers would probably be the club I would support if I could just pick one. I just like the feel about the place. I love Clifton Hill. I've always had a wee bit of a soft spot for them. They just seem like a really close-knit community sort of club.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say you've nailed it on the head there. They tried to do everything they could for you. It was a good club. The fans were great to you as well, and they did as much as they could to look after you.
You obviously had played with Calvin Horsey at Brecon, like we touched on, but at Albion Rovers you would have played with Declan Byrne. So what was Declan Byrne? What were your first impressions of him as someone to play with? Because I think certainly this season he's transformed. Every time he's played, he's transformed the way Dumbarton play. Yeah, you know what you're getting with Decky. Do you know what I mean? He's very, very hard working, great guy as well. So, and actually, I'd already knew Decky previously because I played with him at Cowdenbeath all those years ago. So, do you know what I mean? You knew what you were going to get with Declan Byrne being up top. He's hard working, he can score goals. So, yeah, it was good. Your second season at Albion Rovers was obviously the COVID season, which I think me and Jack were kind of fortunate in that we were in the stadium for that, because one of the few perks of being a journalist, aside from the really high salaries and the nice comments you get from people on social media, are that you got into games over the COVID period. How strange was that? It was really the only time that I got out, and you probably would have been similar, was to do something football related, and then you're playing and it matters, but there's nobody there. Yeah, it was quite strange because obviously the fans bring the atmosphere to the game, so hearing, I don't know, just the echo and hearing everything, it was a bit strange, but no, we're still managing to play football and fortunate to get out to do that. So yeah, they must have all felt like bounce games almost. Is it hard to kind of get yourself up for games like that, or is it still know what's at stake? Yes and no. Yeah, no, because you know what I mean, you love the fans being there and supporting you and cheering you on, and as well it was weird. It was just a strange feeling, but no, it was good. We were still managing to play, so you're still determined to win the game. Yes, I think the further we get away from it, the more I look back on it, and I just think that how bizarre everything was. The first game me and Chris did on commentary, I I was pretty much the first time, I think, certainly the first time in a long time that I'd been with somebody who was kind of out with immediate family. So I was like,
bubble.
Like how close are we allowed to get up here? Like, do we have to commentate in masks? Like, it was just really, really weird. And we had we had our notes on this little stool. We were so unprepared. And we played Dumbarton in the first game. They had 1,000 odd fans trying to log into the stream. The whole thing crashed. It was just a complete disaster. But looking back at that season, driving down completely empty motorways, and the only cars you would see, or the only vehicles you'd see, would either be footballers or team buses. It's just a really bizarre time.
Yeah, because you're just questioning are you allowed to do anything on day-to-day life. It was so strange, just a weird time. Hopefully we never experience anything like that again.
Give you my best footballing COVID memory, because that wasn't a great season for Suns. They didn't score very many goals, but you might remember this. Up at Cove, Dumbarton lost 1-0, and my brother ran the GoPro behind the goal at the time, and the winning goal wasn't over the line, and Jim Duffy had done his post-match and he said to us, was it over the line? And I was like, no, I've seen the video. And my brother came round and showed him the video. And Jim Duffy marched across to Cove, were using a toilet inside the stands as the referee's changing room. And Jim Duffy marched across. There was obviously nobody there apart from me, my brother. You might have been there. And
I wasn't at Cove.
You weren't there, so it would have been me, my brother, and probably Graham Robertson, the programme editor. Jim Duffy opened the door of the toilets and the refs just stood there in his pants. It's and he just, Duffy didn't flinch. He just started being like, I've seen it and it's not even close to me. Well, the refs just stood there in his pants, completely exposed. It had been snowing that day as well, so it was particularly cold. It was one of the most bizarre sort of things that you would never get to see. Certainly as a journalist, you might get to see it in the changing room, so maybe a manager goes and knocks on the ref's door or whatever, but it was the whole internal world of football was just brought out. And yeah, that's my footballing memory of COVID, is some poor ref stood in his pants at Cove with Jim Duffy having a go at him. Which, yeah, that was a really strange time. Obviously you became Albion Rovers captain during your time there. Quite a young age, first of all, for a captain, but obviously Albion Rovers have always had quite a young team. But how much of an honour was it to be given the armband?
Yeah, it was a massive honour and a privilege. Do you know, mate, it would be at any club for the manager to put his trust in you and give that armband. So it was a real proud moment for me and my family.
Had you been captain anywhere before, even playing boys club, youth football, anything like that? Had you ever been a captain before?
Yeah, in my youth days at Cowdenbeath I was the captain there as well, but obviously being professional and having that opportunity, it was amazing.
Do you think, because we'd spoken about it as well, that there's captains without an armband? We'd spoken actually in the podcast, when you listen to the whole thing back, which I obviously know that you will and do on a monthly basis, but when you listen to the whole thing back, we'd spoken about leaders in the back four. We mentioned you and we mentioned Peter Grant. Do you think that was always something that you had, a wee bit of material in your arm doesn't really make a difference? Because for me, I look at you on the pitch and I'm aye, leader, Peter Grant, leader, doesn't have an armband on, but just leading by example. Yeah, you want to do everything you can to help the boys out, and whatever that'll take, I'll do that. So whether it's the armband or not, I'll still do the same things. Now, obviously, when you left Albion Rovers, you moved to Dumbarton, and I remember talking to you on the phone about a week after you signed or something like that, and you said basically your aim was to come here and to challenge for the league. How do you look back on this season? Because it's been, well, what the manager said last week, basically 3 weeks or 3 games has killed Dumbarton's season, after it's been so positive for such large spells, but then just that 3-game spell where, there was barely any bodies on the bench, the guys that are playing are dead on their feet, and that just sort of killed it.
Yeah, it's frustrating, do you know what I mean? You want to come in and you want to win the league, but promotion's your main aim, so it was those couple of weeks, it was really frustrating. Injuries happen, do you know what I mean? You just need to deal with that and get on with it. That's football, so the boys that are on the park just need to get everything they can, and they have done. The boys give absolutely everything week in, week out to do well for themselves, to do well for the club, and to do well for the fans, so I don't think you could ask much more.
It feels like there's almost been a reset as well. I'd always worried, see if the 2 clubs of Dumbarton and Stirling Albion went into the last game of the season and one team was, like Brecon are doing today, but one team was going to be the champions, the other one would be in the playoffs, and if it went down to the last day, that whoever finished second, there would be a massive low going into the playoffs. But it almost feels like that low's happened earlier, and it's maybe given time for a reset, 2 clean sheets in the bounce prior to today, 2 good performances on the bounce. Do you think that is something that's maybe there's been a wee bit of a reset and now Suns are ready to go into the playoffs and actually make the best of that?
Yeah, it could well be. Do you know what I mean? The boys have all got that attitude that we're going in to win every game and put on a performance and give everything that we can. So, and for me, the boys have done that week in, week out. There's not been a game where you feel like, they've threw the towel on. It's definitely not been the case. The boys do everything they can and give everything they can.
you're obviously part of the defence that's setting new club record for clean sheets, and although we've given Brett Long and Harry Brown a lot of sort of praise for that, because I guess clean sheets, you instantly think of goalkeepers, but you've been part of the defence. You played every game this season apart from one at Albion Rovers away.
Rovers, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, how proud are you of that record, and also what's been the key to that?
I just feel like that from day one we've just gelled really, really well, really, really quickly, and that's been a massive key to that. But don't get me wrong, it's Brett, Harry, all the back four, myself, Bucky, Carsey, McNiff and Granty. We've all, like, that's what we were there to do. It's our job to stop goals going in, and so it's a great achievement for myself and the team.
You think having that consistent kind of back five for much of the season with yourself and Bucky and Carsey and McNiff, which it was for most of the season until injuries and stuff happened, that kind of had a big part in it as well?
Yeah, we knew. Do you know what I mean? You know how each and everybody's game, you know how we play and what we're good at and what other boys are good at. So yeah, for me, having that consistency, it's definitely played a big part in it.
Now we get to the part of the podcast that everyone's actually listening for. They don't want to hear our chat about, you playing for Brecon. They don't want to hear our chat about looking back in the last 6 weeks. They want me to ask this question. Aron Lynas, where will you be playing your football for the next 2 seasons?
I'll be here at Dumbarton, and I'm absolutely delighted.
How pleased are you to get that deal over the line?
Yeah, massively. Do you know what I mean? I just wanted to come in here and obviously work hard and try and get into the team first and foremost, and I feel like it's been a good season on a personal level and a team level. So yeah, to be here the next 2 years, I'm absolutely delighted.
Was that an easy one for you, or was there interest from elsewhere?
No, do you know what I mean? I was purely just focused on being successful here, and hopefully the gaffer liked what he's seen and made sure he didn't make a mistake and bring him in, basically. So no, just to repay back the gaffer and him to show his trust in me and give me that. That was all kind of really interested in. That's
when you're supposed to go, Celtic and Rangers were sniffing about, but it just, it'd be a bit of a hassle, and like being on the back page of the Record every week and things like that, it's not really worth it. So I just thought, I'd far rather play here. That's the line that we were expecting from you there.
Yeah.
Just, for future reference.
No, to me, since I've came in for Dale, everyone's been great with me, and the fans, everyone, yourselves, the backroom staff and everyone involved in the club have been great with me, and it made me feel really welcome and at home. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me, really.
It must be nice in part-time football especially to have that sorted before the summer. You're not, worrying about a deal or not having to think about things, that you can, whenever the season ends, you can just have a break from football for a wee bit, go away, have a holiday or whatever, and then come back and where you're going to be playing your football. Realistically, a lot of the guys who are going to be sticking around, I think you're the 9th signed up for the season, so it's going to be a very similar squad to last year. That sort of consistency for Dumbarton especially is something that Suns have lacked in recent years.
Yeah, a lot of all the boys that have signed so far, they've been great additions this year, and I know they'll be the same next year as well. So yeah, just to be sorted for the next 2 seasons is great, and as you said, you can go and relax and kind of not stress about it and enjoy the time off.
How difficult can that be over a summer? I mean, I don't know what position you've been in exactly in your career, but when you've not got a deal lined up for a new season, that must be a kind of weird and horrible time where you don't know where you're going to be playing your football, you don't know what level you're going to be playing at.
Yeah, you kind of, it does play on your mind a bit. You want to make sure you're making the right decision, and it's not going to dwell for too long. You want to be known, right, yeah, this is what I'm going to be doing, this is where I'm going to be playing, and purely focus on that. So yeah, it can be a stressful time, but for me this year that's not going to be the case.
And I think we're all absolutely delighted about that one. Not that we can say, because that's embarrassing. So that's Lynas signed up another 6 out of 10 performance every week. Fed up with that. Anyway, I like to always finish these podcasts off with a kind of curveball of a question. And I've asked Stevie Farrell, for example, what player he would compare himself to when he was in the current squad and things like that. But for you, I'd like to know, given the sort of player that you are, who do you think the most underrated player is that you've played with right throughout your career? I like putting players on the spot with these sort of things.
Good question.
You always get that puff of the cheeks as well when you answer.
Trademark.
You just call it quits on the interview here if you want, to be honest. I don't know, there's been a few. I'm just trying to think.
I'll tell you a wee story while you think. So over lockdown, when we didn't have match reports in the paper, I sent out a few players that I knew. I was like, could you come up with a dream team, the guys you played with, goalkeeper, back four, midfield 4 and 2 up front. And everyone that I sent it out to did it and came back, and it was all really interesting. One guy that I know, and I won't name him, but he knows who he is and he might be listening, one guy came back and was like, nah, I've got too many pals in football, and if I pick 11 of them, then some of them won't actually talk to me, like they'll take it quite personally. So like everyone else was like, some guys came back within like an hour, like, there's mine, like Morgan Neal WhatsApped me his quite quickly, like no doubt at all about
He
it.
had it ready.
And he was just waiting for that question to be asked. He reads his Lennox Herald and he saw that other players were asked, and he's like, it's only a matter of time. But one guy came back to me and was just like, nah, I'd follow it with my pals, they take it quite seriously. So that's the sort of pressure I'm putting on you now, that if you miss out somebody, you're going to get a text going like, here, Aaron, why did you not mention me for the most underrated player?
I'll go with that answer, yeah.
Can't believe you cop out of this. Now, who's the most overrated? No, we'll turn the microphones off and we'll ask you that one. But no, Aaron, thank you very much for your time, and I will see you next season and the season after that on this podcast, and you can have a good, long, hard think about the most underrated player. You should have just said Ryan Blair. That's what me and Jack said.
Easy answer.
Aye, Ryan Blair's the easy answer. But no, thank you very much for your time, and good luck for the rest of the season and for the playoffs.
No, that's great. Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.